The quiet man in the corner. The sky outside was painted in soft orange and pink, the sun slowly sinking beyond the city skyline. It was a peaceful evening in Los Angeles, the kind that made people want to sit on patios and share stories over warm meals. But inside a small, modern restaurant tucked between two glass buildings on Main Street, something was brewing, something that no one saw coming. This restaurant wasn't just any restaurant. It was owned by someone famous, someone loved around the world not for fame alone, but for how he treated people. Keanu Reeves had quietly bought the place 2 years ago. He didn't name it after himself. He didn't hang pictures of his face on the wall. Instead, he wanted it to be a place of comfort and respect, a place where everyone, no matter their background, could feel welcome. But Keanu had been hearing things, whispers, stories, anonymous emails. Someone mentioned a waiter who treated guests differently depending on how they looked, a hostess who rolled her eyes at customers who didn't dress well, a busboy who muttered under his breath when serving people with accents. Keanu didn't want to believe it, but he knew the truth always showed itself, if you paid close enough attention. So that evening, dressed in an old hoodie, jeans that were a little worn at the knees, and scuffed shoes, Keanu walked through the side door and took a seat in the far corner of his own restaurant. He looked like any tired man after a long day of work. No cameras followed him. No spotlight glowed above his head. The staff didn't know him by face, not without the polished hair, the black suit, or the movie lights. That was the plan. He wanted to see what regular people saw when they walked in. He wanted the truth. The restaurant was buzzing but not full. The air smelled of roasted garlic, grilled herbs, and warm bread. Laughter came from one table near the front, while a couple whispered softly near the windows. But when Keanu looked at the staff, he noticed something strange. A young couple walked in hand. The woman had short curly hair and wore a long blue dress. The man wore a simple sweater and jeans. They were black, and they smiled kindly as they approached. The hostess, she barely looked at them. Her voice was flat, almost cold. "Do you have a reservation?" she asked. "No, but we were hoping." "Then you'll need to wait." She cut them off. "Maybe 20-30 minutes." Keanu watched closely. A few minutes later, another couple entered. They were white, both dressed in fancy clothes, laughing loudly. They didn't have a reservation either, but the same hostess smiled wide and said, "Right this way," and led them to a table without checking anything. Keanu's chest tightened. Maybe he was imagining things. Maybe it was just a mistake. But deep down, he knew it wasn't. He stayed quiet and waited. After 10 minutes, a waiter finally approached Keanu's table. He looked young, maybe mid-20s, with slicked back, hair and a name tag that said Devin. He barely made eye contact. Are you sure you're in the right place?" Devin asked. Keanu raised his eyebrows gently. "I think so." Devin gave him a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Okay, well, our menu is kind of upscale, just letting you know. Drinks start at $10. Keanu nodded. "Thank you. I'll take some water for now. And maybe the house pasta." Devin didn't write anything down. He simply sighed and walked away, mumbling something under his breath. Keanu didn't hear it, but he saw the way another waiter laughed quietly. As Devin passed by, something was wrong, very wrong. A few tables away, an older Latino man sat with his wife and 2 kids. Their order was delayed 3 times. When they asked politely about it, a waitress rolled her eyes and muttered something about some people always complaining. The tone wasn't just unkind. It was filled with something darker, something rooted in the idea that certain people deserved less. Keanu's hands curled into soft fists under the table. He had spent his life trying to be kind, trying to do good in silence. But now, watching this unfold in a place that was meant to be fair, he felt something burning inside him. Not rage, but a deep, disappointed sorrow. His food came late. It was cold. Devin didn't say a word when he placed the plate on the table. Didn't ask if Keanu needed anything else. Didn't even offer pepper or cheese. Keanu ate slowly, thinking, watching. memorizing faces, behavior, body language. He noticed the manager, a tall man in a tailored suit, laughing with the fancy couple at the front. When the black couple who were made to wait finally got a table, no one even offered them a menu until they asked twice. And when they finally ordered, the waiter looked annoyed. Keanu couldn't sit still anymore. He left a tip anyway, because he believed in grace even when others failed to give it, and walked quietly toward the kitchen. He knew the layout. He had helped design it. Past the swinging door, the kitchen buzzed with movement, heat, and sharp voices. A few chefs recognized him, their eyes going wide, but he placed a finger over his lips and asked softly, "Please don't say anything yet." Then he turned to the manager who had just stepped into the back. "Can we talk?" Keanu asked, his voice calm but firm. The manager didn't recognize him. Sure. Make it quick though, we're busy." They stepped into the dry storage room. The manager folded his arms. "What's this about?" Keanu looked him straight in the eyes. "I own this restaurant." The manager blinked. "What?" "I'm Keanu Reeves, and tonight I've seen enough to know there's a serious problem here." The manager's face turned pale. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Keanu didn't raise his voice. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just said the truth. "People are being treated differently here, based on race, based on class, and it breaks everything this place was meant to stand for. I want names, I want reports, and I want changes immediately." The silence between them was thick. The truth had been spoken, and there was no way to take it back. Keanu walked back into the dining area, his hoodie still on, eyes scanning the room one last time. The couple at the window smiled at him gently. He nodded in return. The older man with the family caught his gaze too. Keanu gave him a respectful nod. Hope was still there. Kindness could still rise, but not without action. Tonight was only the beginning. Behind closed doors, after that long night, Keanu didn't go home. Instead, he drove through quiet city streets, thinking about every face he saw at the restaurant. The unfair stares, the ignored voices, the bitter silence that replaced kindness. He had built that place with hope. Now he had to rebuild it with truth. The next morning, before the restaurant opened, Keanu returned. He wore the same hoodie and jeans. This time, he didn't sit in a corner or hide in shadows. He walked straight through the front door and stood in the middle of the dining room. The manager, whose name was Rick, saw him and froze. "Keanu?" Rick's voice was shaky. "You're back early." "I never left," Keanu said, calm but steady. "We're having a staff meeting now," Rick stammered. "But we open in, cancel the first 2 hours. We need to fix something more important than breakfast." Within 20 minutes, every employee was gathered in the main room. Some were confused. Some looked nervous. Devin, the waiter from last night, leaned against the wall with his arms crossed, bored. The hostess who turned away the black couple checked her phone when she thought no one was looking. Keanu stood before them like a teacher facing a classroom that didn't yet know why they were in trouble. "This is going to be the hardest thing. You hear this year?" Keanu said. "But it's also the most important." The room went quiet. "Last night I came in dressed like any other guest. No one knew who I was. I did that because I had heard things I hoped weren't true." He paused, letting the words settle. "But they were true. I saw them with my own eyes. People being treated worse because of how they looked, because they didn't wear designer clothes, because their skin wasn't pale enough, and it happened in this restaurant." Nobody spoke. This place was supposed to be different. It was supposed to be a space where everyone, from anywhere, felt like they belonged. Instead, it's become something ugly. Devin rolled his eyes slightly. Keanu saw it. Others did too. "So here's what's going to happen," Keanu continued. "This isn't just a warning. This is change." He walked over to a small table where a folder sat. He opened it and pulled out several sheets. "I have notes from last night. I know who said what. I know who ignored guests. I know who laughed when someone got mistreated. And if you're in this room and think that doesn't matter, think again." Rick looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. "We're starting with a 2-week retraining program. If you don't complete it, you don't work here anymore. No second chances, no excuses." Someone finally spoke. It was Maria, one of the chefs in the back. She had been with the restaurant from day one. What about people who've been trying to speak up but no one listened? Keanu nodded. I want to hear from all of you. If someone's been silent about racism or disrespect because they were afraid of losing their job, come to me. That ends now. The staff looked around at each other. For the first time, you could feel a shift in the air. It wasn't anger or shame. It was something like hope. Small, uncertain, but real. Keanu didn't finish the meeting with applause or handshakes. He simply said, "Think about the kind of people you want to be. Think about the stories you want this place to tell, and then act like it." He turned and walked into the kitchen, leaving them all to sit with the weight of truth. Later that afternoon, Keanu sat in his office reviewing reports. Maria came in quietly, closing the door behind her. "Can I talk to you?" she asked. He looked up. "Of course." She sat down across from him, folding her hands. "I've been wanting to speak up for months. There were times I saw things happen, bad things, customers being ignored or spoken down to, but I was afraid." "Why?" Keanu asked gently. "Because I'm not white either," she said. "Because some of the staff look at me like I don't belong. And because people like Devin have friends in management. They make you feel small." Keanu leaned forward. "Not anymore. You're not small here. You're seen, you're heard, and if you help me, we're going to make sure no one else feels that way again." Maria smiled, the first real smile she'd shown in weeks. "Then I'll tell you everything," she said. They stayed in the office for 2 hours. Names, incidents, patterns. Everything that had been hidden behind closed doors began to pour out like water from a broken dam. And it wasn't just Maria. That evening after their shifts, 3 more workers came to Keanu. One was a dishwasher from Guatemala who'd been mocked for his accent. Another was a new hostess who had only worked 2 weeks and already felt bullied. The third was an older server who had once been written up for bad attitude when he defended a family who didn't speak English well. Each of them shared their stories, and Keanu listened to every word. By the end of the night, he had a new picture of his restaurant, one far from the dream he once had, but one he could still rebuild. The next day, Devin didn't show up for training. Keanu sent a message. "If you don't come in by noon, your position is terminated." Devin replied with a single sentence, "I'm not learning anything from a guy who hides in hoodies." So Keanu let him go. It wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. The kind of truth that doesn't need a spotlight, only action and word, began to spread. A blog picked up the story. Someone from the couple who had been mistreated that first night posted a message online. "We were ignored because of our skin, but the owner saw it happen. And he didn't stay silent." By the end of the week, people began to come back. Not because of fame, not because of celebrity, but because they heard that something rare was happening there. Someone was trying to make things right. One evening, as Keanu stood by the entrance greeting guests quietly, the same black couple walked in again. This time, the hostess smiled warmly. "Welcome. We have a lovely table waiting for you." They looked surprised, but pleased. Keanu walked over. "Good to see you both again," he said softly. The woman blinked. "Wait, are you?" He nodded. "I'm sorry for how you were treated before. Truly." The man smiled. "You didn't just say sorry. You did something." Keanu gave a small bow of the head. "That's what matters." They shook his hand, and as they sat down, Maria passed by holding 2 plates. She gave Keanu a knowing look, and he smiled back. This was only the beginning. Justice wasn't about noise. It was about quiet courage, shown again and again. The restaurant was changing, not by accident, but by heart. The walls start to talk by the 3rd week. Everything inside the restaurant felt different. It wasn't just the fresh flowers on each table or the updated menu designed by Maria and her team. It was something deeper, something in the air. Guests could feel it the moment they walked through the door. There was respect now, and warmth. Smiles that didn't feel forced. Greetings that came from the heart. But while the front of the house was healing, the back still carried old wounds. In the staff locker room, whispers lingered. Some employees, especially those who had grown too comfortable with the old ways, didn't like the changes. They missed the days when they could laugh at guests behind their backs. They called it freedom. What they didn't understand was that true freedom meant lifting others, not stepping on them. One of those voices was Bradley. He was a senior server, quiet during meetings but loud in private chats. He didn't like Keanu's kindness. Called, "It's soft," said the restaurant was turning into a place where anyone could walk in. He didn't mean it as a compliment. Maria heard him one night while changing out of her apron. He was talking to another waiter near the back exit. "You know what's funny?" Bradley said. "He's doing all this for people who don't even tip. I saw that same couple last week. They smiled and nodded and left $3 on a $100 bill." The other waiter chuckled nervously. Maria felt her face grow hot. It wasn't about the money. It never had been. It was about the way some of them still saw people, as less, as unworthy. That night she sent a message to Keanu. "There's still rot in the walls," she wrote. Keanu didn't reply with anger. Instead he asked, "Can you talk tomorrow morning? 7 a.m.? The next morning Maria arrived before sunrise. The restaurant was silent, bathed in dim golden light from the kitchen. Keanu was already there, wearing a simple gray sweater, a notebook open on the table. He stood when she entered. "Thanks for coming," he said. "Always," Maria replied. They sat in the booth by the window, the same booth where Keanu had first watched the unfairness unfold. "I want to tell you everything I heard," Maria said. "But first, you need to know. It's not just one or two people. It's the way some staff talk when they think no one's listening." Keanu nodded. "Then we need to listen better." She told him about Bradley, the way he joked, the way he talked about guests, how others followed his lead, how the new staff didn't know whether to speak up or stay silent. Keanu wrote down every name, every pattern. "I don't want to fire everyone," he said softly. "I want to change hearts, but I also can't let poison stay in the well." Maria looked out the window. "Some of them won't change. Then we make room for those who will," Keanu said. Later that day he called another meeting. This time it was only for the servers. Bradley came in late, wearing sunglasses and chewing gum. "So what's this about?" he said loudly. Keanu stood in the middle of the floor, his voice calm as ever. "I want to talk about something that still lives here, something we haven't cleaned out yet." He paused. "I want to talk about quiet racism." Some of the servers shifted in their seats. Bradley scoffed under his breath. Keanu continued. "It's not always loud. Sometimes it's a look, a joke, a cold tone. Sometimes it's what we say when the guest walks away." He looked around the room. "That kind of behavior tells our guests, you're not welcome here, even if we smile while doing it." No one spoke. "If you've been part of that, you have a choice. Step forward, admit it, and commit to change. Or leave." Bradley stood up. "So we're just throwing away people now?" Keanu looked at him calmly. "We're throwing away hate. If you think respect is weakness, then you're in the wrong place." Bradley's face twisted. "You think you can fix the world with your movie star lectures?" "No," Keanu replied. "But I can start by fixing my own house." The silence that followed was heavy. Bradley walked out, slamming the door. He never came back. Over the next week, Keanu made more changes. A new policy was introduced. Every employee had to attend a weekly empathy workshop, run by a counselor who specialized in conflict and inclusion, not to punish but to teach. The workshops were quiet, honest spaces. People shared their fears, their childhoods, their past mistakes. It wasn't easy. Some cried, some got angry, but many began to see differently. The dishwasher from Guatemala, whose name was Enrique, shared a story during one session. "When I came here," he said, "I thought I would finally be safe. But even in this place, I was called slow, dumb, too quiet." He looked up at the group. "But I speak 3 languages. I'm not dumb. I'm just tired." No one laughed. No one looked away. After that, people started saying his name with respect. Even Devon's old friends, who had once mocked him, now asked him questions, tried to learn from him. The walls of the restaurant didn't just carry sound anymore. They carried healing. One night, Keanu stood by the window again, watching the guests. The couple from before, the ones who were once ignored, now laughed with the new hostess, a kind woman from Ethiopia named Selim. A group of construction workers shared dessert with their kids at the long table by the brick wall. A man in a wheelchair rolled out of the restroom smiling, saying, This place feels like family." Keanu felt something shift inside him. Not pride, something softer, something like peace. Maria joined him at the window. "You know," she said, "I used to think this was just a job." "And now?" Keanu asked. "Now, it feels like we're building something bigger than food." Keanu nodded slowly. "We are." But just when it seemed like everything was finally on the right track, something happened. A letter arrived. It was anonymous. Typed. Unsigned. Placed. In the mailbox by hand. Keanu opened it in his office. The words inside were sharp. "You've made enemies. Not everyone wants this place to change. Not everyone will stay silent. Watch your back." Keanu stared at the letter for a long time. This wasn't over. The darkness hadn't fully left. It was just hiding. He folded the letter and placed it in his drawer. He didn't tell Maria. Not yet. He would wait. He would watch. And he would be ready. The mask behind the smile, the next few days felt like walking on a tightrope. On the surface, the restaurant was blooming. Guests returned in greater numbers, some of them curious after hearing about the changes. Reviews online began to shift. Words, like warm, respectful, and heartfelt, started replacing older phrases like inconsistent service and unwelcoming staff. But behind the scenes, Keanu couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him. He kept the anonymous letter hidden in his office drawer. He didn't want to cause panic or suspicion among the team, not without knowing where the threat had come from. But his instincts, sharpened from years in film and life, told him that this was more than just a bitter ex-employee blowing off steam. It felt personal. And then something small, but strange, happened. Maria came into the kitchen one morning and found all the spice labels switched. The sugar container had been replaced with salt. The prep lists for lunch service had been erased from the whiteboard. Nothing big enough to break the place, but enough to create stress and confusion. Maria reported it to Keanu immediately. "This feels like someone's trying to mess with us," she said. From the inside, Keanu listened carefully, his face calm. But inside, he felt his gut twist. It wasn't just a prank. It was a warning. "Who had keys last night?" he asked. "Rick," Maria said. "And maybe the new guy." "James," Keanu nodded slowly. James had been hired 2 weeks ago. A dishwasher with good references, soft-spoken, polite. Too polite, maybe. "Get some rest," Keanu told Maria. "I'll stay late tonight." That night, the last guest left around 10:15 p.m. The staff cleaned up, turned off the music, stacked the chairs, and started heading out. Keanu stayed behind, pretending to go through paperwork in his office. But really, he was watching the cameras, live feeds from the security system he had upgraded after receiving the letter. He watched as the last cook left. Then the lights dimmed, but someone came back in. Keanu squinted at the screen. It was James. James moved through the kitchen quickly, as if he knew where every camera was. He avoided the direct lines of sight, staying in shadows. But one angle caught him clearly, standing by the walk-in fridge, replacing a sealed bag of flour with another one. Keanu's heart dropped. He grabbed his phone and sent a quick message to Rick, the manager, telling him to meet him at the restaurant immediately. By the time Rick arrived, James was gone. They checked the bag of flour James had left. Nothing looked wrong at first, but when Maria inspected it the next morning, she found small bits of something shiny, tiny flakes of aluminum foil. "This could have made someone really sick," she said. Keanu's face hardened. It wasn't a game anymore. It was sabotage. He called another emergency meeting, this time with the entire staff. No soft words, no long speeches. "Someone tried to poison our food," he said. "This isn't about hurt feelings. This is about safety, and it ends now." He told them everything. The letter, the switched labels, the tampered flour. He didn't name James, not yet. He didn't want chaos. But he looked at every face, watching closely. Some looked shocked, others looked scared, and one looked almost calm. Rick. Keanu couldn't explain it at first. But something in Rick's body language was off. No surprise, no concern. Just a quiet glance around the room, like he already knew. After the meeting, Keanu pulled Rick aside. "You okay?" he asked. "Of course," Rick said, smiling. "Just worried. Whoever's doing this needs to be caught." But his tone was too smooth, his hands too still. Keanu knew that kind of smile. He had seen it in movies, and in real life. A mask. He decided to investigate quietly. Over the next few days, Keanu reviewed the camera footage again and again. Not just the night James returned, but all the nights when odd things had happened. And something started to emerge. James hadn't worked alone. There were moments when James came in late, but Rick had unlocked the door first. Moments when Rick signed off the cleaning crew early. Moments when the tampered supplies had only been touched by those two. Keanu put it all together in a timeline, and when he felt sure, he called Maria into his office. "I need you to see something," he said, showing her the clips and the notes. Her eyes widened. "Rick? But he's been here since the start." "That's why no one questioned him," Keanu said. "He knew how to hide." Maria looked sick to her stomach. "What do we do?" Keanu stood up. "We bring him in. We give him one chance to tell the truth." That afternoon, Rick was called into the office. He walked in with the same calm smile. "Something wrong?" he asked. Keanu nodded. "Yes, and I think you know what it is." Rick's smile didn't fade. "I really don't." Keanu turned the laptop screen around and pressed play. Rick watched the footage, saw himself unlocking the door, standing with James, handing over a key, all of it caught in tiny moments he hadn't noticed. His smile finally cracked. "Why?" Keanu asked softly. Rick sat down, his shoulders suddenly heavy. "Because this place stopped being mine." Keanu frowned. "It was never yours, Rick." "I built this with you," Rick said bitterly. "From the ground up. But then you started changing everything. Hiring people who didn't belong. Turning this place into some kind of charity." "No," Keanu said, his voice firm. "I turned it into what it was always meant to be. A place for everyone." Rick looked away. "I didn't think you'd catch me." "You didn't think I'd care," Keanu corrected. There was a long silence. "You're fired, Rick. Permanently. And if we find anything else connected to James, we'll go to the police." Rick stood up, his eyes dark. "You're making a mistake." Keanu looked him in the eye. "No, I'm making a choice." Rick walked out of the office without another word. The next morning, Keanu addressed the staff again. He told them everything. The truth about Rick, the sabotage, the danger they had all been in. "We survived this," he said, "because we stood together, and because we told the truth." He looked around the room. "You don't fix a place by ignoring its cracks. You fix it by facing them." The room was silent for a moment. Then Maria began to clap. Then Enrique. Then Salam. Then everyone, not out of duty, but out of hope. That night, as the restaurant filled with laughter again, Keanu stood outside by the sidewalk. He looked up at the sky, quiet stars beginning to appear. Maria joined him. "Rick's gone," she said. "But the fear he planted, it might take time to fully wash out." "Then we give it time," Keanu said. "And truth. And kindness." She smiled. "You think people can really change?" "I think they already are." He looked through the glass and saw Enrique training a new hire. Salam helping a guest in a wheelchair. The kitchen running like a heartbeat. "We're not just serving food," Keanu said. "We're serving dignity." And even though the night was cool, the warmth from inside the restaurant reached them both. The story goes public 3 days after Rick was fired. A reporter showed up outside the restaurant. She was young, holding a notepad and a camera bag, and wore a bright red scarf that fluttered in the spring breeze. Her name was Elena Cho, and she worked for a local magazine that focused on stories of justice and community healing. She had heard whispers about Keanu's restaurant, how it had gone from a place of quiet discrimination to a space of active change. She wanted to know if it was true. Keanu didn't seek attention, but he understood the power of stories. If what they had done could help other businesses take a hard look at themselves, maybe it was worth sharing. He met Elena outside near the small garden patch Maria had planted with herbs. It was a quiet spot, just far enough from the street noise. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," she said, offering a soft smile. "Thank you for being curious," Keanu replied. They sat on the small wooden bench. Keanu wore a simple black t-shirt, his hair tied loosely at the back. Elena clicked her pen. "I want to get the story right," she said. "So tell me, how did all of this begin?" Keanu took a deep breath, remembering the cold plate of pasta, the couple who waited too long for a table, the way Devin had looked at him like he didn't belong. "It started with silence," he said, "and it ended with voices." He told her everything, how he had walked in undercover, what he had seen, the changes they made, the letter, the sabotage, and finally, the healing. He spoke slowly, choosing each word with care, not to protect himself, but to protect the truth. Elena listened without interrupting, only writing when necessary. When he finished, she asked, "Why not just fire everyone and start over?" Keanu looked at the garden. "Because people deserve the chance to grow," he said. "You don't fix things by burning them down. You fix them by planting better seeds." The article came out a week later. The title was simple: "Undercover at His Own Restaurant, Keanu Reeves and the Fight for Dignity." It spread like wildfire. People shared it across social media. The comment section filled with stories from readers, some who had been victims of unfair treatment in other restaurants, others who had worked in places with similar hidden cruelty. Many said the same thing: "This gives me hope." Celebrities reposted it. Business owners reached out. Even a few past employees who had left before the changes wrote in to say, "I wish I had stayed. I'm proud of what you did." But not everyone was happy. One morning, Maria walked into the restaurant and found graffiti sprayed across the back wall. "Fake kindness, real traitors." It was painted in red, rough letters dripping like blood. Keanu came to see it himself. He didn't say much. He just looked at it for a long time. Then he went into the storage room, came back with a bucket of paint, and began to scrub it off by hand. Maria joined him. "You don't have to do this alone," she said. "I never have," he replied softly. But the hate didn't stop there. A few fake reviews began to appear online. Anonymous 1-star ratings with no text. A sudden drop in their average score. Maria tracked the usernames and noticed they were all new accounts, created within days of the article going viral. Keanu didn't panic. He didn't post long messages defending himself. Instead, he made one quiet post on the restaurant's page. "We believe in kindness. And we believe in standing up, even when the wind pushes back. If you've had a real experience with us, please share it. Your voice matters." And voices came, hundreds of them. Comments from guests describing how the staff treated their elderly parents with care, how the servers made their children feel special, how the kitchen went out of its way to cook allergy-friendly meals with a smile. The flood of love washed the hate away. A few nights later, something happened that Keanu would never forget. An elderly woman walked in holding the hand of a teenage girl. The girl wore a scarf over her head and looked shy, almost afraid. They were seated at a small table near the window. Keanu walked over to greet them. "Welcome," he said gently. The grandmother smiled. "She's been through a lot," she said. "We don't go out much anymore. But when she read the article about what you did here, she said she wanted to come." Keanu looked at the girl. I'm honored you're here. The girl looked up, her voice barely a whisper. Is it really safe here? As safe as we can make it, Keanu replied, and safer every day. They smiled. They ate. And by the time dessert came, the girl was laughing. Maria saw it from the kitchen and wiped a tear from her cheek. As the restaurant grew stronger, Keanu decided to take one final step. He gathered the staff one morning and made an announcement. We're starting something new, he said, a program. They leaned in, curious. Every month we'll reserve one table free of charge for someone who's been through something hard, someone who needs a place where they feel human again. You'll help choose them. You'll help serve them. And you'll show them what this place has become. A long silence followed. Then Selim, the hostess, stood up and clapped once. Yes, she said. Others joined her. Enrique, Maria, even the quiet new hire from Nigeria named Bola. The restaurant wasn't just healing. It was becoming whole. Keanu stood by the door that night as people entered one by one. He greeted them, remembered their names, smiled with real warmth. Outside, the wind blew soft through the trees, and for the first time in a long time, he felt it in his bones, the sense that something broken had not only been mended, but transformed. He turned, back inside, where the lights glowed like lanterns of hope. The quiet revolution, the final weeks of spring brought something beautiful to the restaurant, something deeper than success. The tables were always full now, not just with people, but with emotion. Strangers shared stories between bites. Laughter echoed through the kitchen doors. The waitstaff worked like a family. The scent of roasted vegetables, warm bread, and grilled salmon filled the air. But more than anything, the place smelled of respect. Keanu stood near the back one evening watching Maria train two new hires. She had grown into a leader, firm, fair, and full of grace. Salam managed the front with calm precision, balancing kindness and strength. Enrique was now lead dishwasher, mentoring teens from a nearby shelter that Keanu had started to partner with. The walls of the restaurant had once hidden quiet prejudice. Now, they held stories of healing. But one story was still unfinished. The one about James. No one had seen him since the night he tampered with the flour. The police were still searching, but Keanu hadn't heard anything. Until a letter arrived one morning, tucked into the mailbox behind a pile of ads and receipts. He opened it carefully. The handwriting was shaky. I thought hurting you would fix something in me. It didn't. I lost my job. I lost respect. But I see now that I never had those things to begin with. You tried to teach us something and I fought it. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be better. I'm working at a shelter now, sweeping floors, serving meals. I think about what you said a lot, about dignity. Thank you for not turning your back. There was no name at the bottom, but Keanu knew. He folded the letter and placed it gently in a small wooden box in his office. The box was labeled Second Chances. That evening, the restaurant held something special, the launch of their new monthly tradition, the Table of Honor. Maria had chosen the first guest. His name was Mr. Jackson, an elderly man who had once been denied service at another restaurant for wearing an old coat and walking with a limp. He was a retired history teacher who now tutored local kids at the library for free. Maria met him once when she brought food to her nephew. She never forgot his quiet smile. Now, he sat at the center table near the kitchen window, sipping soup that had been made with extra care. Keanu stood nearby, wearing his regular clothes. Nothing flashy. Just a man observing something meaningful. Mr. Jackson looked around the room. I haven't felt this welcome in years, he said softly to Maria. You deserve it, she replied, and everyone else at the restaurant seemed to feel it too, the invisible gravity of goodness pulling them closer together. Later that week, something else unexpected happened. Keanu received an email from a national news anchor. She wanted to do a short documentary segment on the story. She had read the article by Elena, watched how the story grew, and said it was one of the few pieces of hope we have in the world right now. Keanu was hesitant. He had never done any of this for attention. But after speaking with Maria and Enrique, he agreed, on one condition. "Tell the truth," he said. "Tell their stories, not mine." The segment aired 2 weeks later. It was called What a Restaurant Taught Us About Being Human. Within hours, emails poured in from around the country. Business owners, students, parents, even prisoners. Some messages said, "I cried. Thank you. I run a cafe in Boston. I'm starting my own table of honor. You reminded me that kindness is action, not words." Keanu didn't reply to all of them. He couldn't. But he read every single one. And in his heart, he knew something had begun. A quiet revolution, built not on noise, but on truth, humility, and one brave act at a time. On the 1-year anniversary of the restaurant's rebirth, the team held a small celebration. No grand party, no flashing lights, just the staff, a few close friends and guests who had become family. They cooked a special meal together. They lit candles for those who had once been ignored and now were seen. They shared one thing each. They had learned, Salem said. "I learned that hospitality is a kind of justice." Enrique said, "I learned that my voice matters." Maria said, "I learned that standing up is worth the fear." Keanu waited until everyone else had spoken. Then he said, "I learned that silence is dangerous, and that love is louder." They toasted with sparkling cider and hugged like survivors of something sacred. As the night ended, Keanu stood outside the restaurant one last time that evening. The sign above the door didn't carry his name. It never had. It simply read, "The Table." Just that. Because in the end, that's what it was all about. A table, where people sat, where eyes met, where dignity was served fresh, every single day. And inside, at that table near the window, a small family sat down to eat. The daughter wore a hearing aid. The mother looked tired. The boy clutched a toy car. The server knelt beside them. "Welcome," she said. "We're so glad you're here." And she meant it because everything had changed, and it had all started with a man in a hoodie, sitting quietly in the corner who chose not to walk away.